Greetings, greetings, fam.
Yes, I am. Well, this is Tasha T. Right about now, it's all about the Roots Reggae Radio. So let's talk with Lady Sharon. World we could be living in. Beautiful world we should be living in. Well, this is Tasha T. And right about now, I want to say enough respect going out to Lady Sharon. So keep it locked and don't touch that dial. Making this world a beautiful place.
Greetings, greetings, family, Roots Reggae Hub family, Twitter, Instagram. We have a wonderful show with a return guest, Jamelia Gay from Diamond Initiative. I do see that she has joined, and as we welcome her on, I just want to share a little bit about Jamelia Gay. There's quite a bit about Jamelia Gay. So in the meantime, while she joins, I'm going to start to share her bio with us. Today, Jamelia Gay is the founder and the manager director of Diamond Initiative, provider of ADHD and executive function coaching, as well as a virtual tutoring and educational consultancy services in Trinidad and Tobago and the Greater Toronto area. Through her coaching program, Jamelia teaches you to transform your life with on-purpose thinking and coaches you to master your focus, working memory, impulsivity, emotional regulation, task completion, and self-confidence. So I would love to just welcome up on Jamelia Gay. I do see that she's joined us. We could just get around there. And again, there's a lot about Jamelia. Jamelia is also the co-founder of Global Empowerment Initiative, a non-profit organization which is geared towards the universal empowerment of children, women, and men in vulnerable and marginalized communities. Her passion for elevating the Black community was expanded through her virtual series, Diamond Initiative, presents I Am Unapologetically Black and Marginalized. And there we have Jamelia. Oh, it switched out. I'm Unapologetically Black. And Diamond Initiative presents I Am Still Black. Throughout the series, Jamelia hosted weekly conversations on presentation, identity, empowerment in the communities throughout Canada and the Caribbean. In addition to hosting, Jamelia has also been a guest on various media platforms, including CCN, TV6, TTT News, CNC3, News Trinidad and Tobago, and the Follow Your First Mind podcast. Wow, that's deep. Again, we have with us, Jamelia. I saw her join for a moment, and then we'll just see if we can get her back. And if you guys do see me switching in and out of my jacket, it's that life that I live. It's quite the challenge. Ooh. So, and today we're going to be speaking with Jamelia Gay about adult ADHD. This is something that not many people have examined, but it's something that does absolutely exist. And we want to know what that looks like. And Jamelia is going to give us a little bit of insight as to what adult ADHD looks like, as to what is executive function. This is something that a lot of us, okay, so you're having troubles joining? Okay. Okay. There we go,
Okay.
Jamelia.
Hi, sorry. So
It's all
first, I
good.
couldn't hear anything, so I was in it and I saw you, but I couldn't tune into the audio, then the video. Nice to see you. Good evening, everyone.
Lovely to see you too. I'm going through a lot of sweating right now. So if you see me
Why?
dip it out, it's like I'm gonna probably take off my jacket. Oh boy, it's wonderful to have you. We just shared with our listeners a little bit about you. Well, there's a lot about you, and I'm actually just so grateful to have even just connected with you. And for those of you that do not know, the first show that I've had with Jamelia was our actual first conversation
That's
ever.
true.
This is actually our second conversation ever.
That is
Like,
true.
apart from like, a text here or there, but I'm just so grateful to have connected with you as I learn more about your mission with Diamond Initiative. And, the last show that we did, well, I was actually wanting to crawl under a rug because I saw
Why?
my ADHD lifestyle and I was just
Ah,
like fidgeting and I was like, I don't know what happened that night, but it was like there was no hiding. Out of
but
all
but
of
that
my,
that's the I would say that's actually the plus, even though it's making you uncomfortable, that's actually the plus of having these conversations, right? Because it's helping you identify those traits in yourself. So take that as a positive though, because then once you identify it, it can help you hone that skill or find strategies to help support that, right? So I see that as a plus.
okay, okay. And I also feel not alone just knowing a bit about your background and that you
Mm,
yourself had struggled with it. I didn't understand that. Even the day when I spoke to you, I didn't
mm,
even know that this is something that you've overcome because it's something that, you see your functionality and your contribution and the achievements that you have made. And it's like, yes, there's a genius about this, not just chaos,
mm.
If you could just let our listeners know a little bit about the Diamond Initiative.
Of course. Before I do that, actually, because I just don't want to forget this later, but you touched on something really important right there, and I'm so glad you said it. And I want everyone who's listening to know and understand and internalize that ADHD and success are not mutually exclusive. So if you have a diagnosis, or even if you don't have a diagnosis, but you match an ADHD profile, you are not doomed. You are not set to fail. Your life is not over. It simply means that now your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to find strategies that help to hone your skills and make your own lifestyle and your traits work for you. So success is still very much you're capable of success. It's very achievable, and it doesn't mean that you are not going to be able to live your best life or your highest functional life. So I just wanted to make that clear before we move forward. So thank you
Okay,
for
I'm
bringing
glad
that
you
up.
did because that's how I honestly was like, oh my God.
Mm.
you know, I'm a hot mess, and everything that I'm learning, I'm like, no, that's not me. This is not me, If you could just tell our listeners a little bit about, the Diamond Initiative,
Mhm.
even though I shared a little bit about it, in the bio, and, where it came all about.
Of course. So I actually launched Diamond Initiative in 2020. So when we were first really pushed into that pandemic, this pandemic situation. I launched Diamond Initiative because even though I loved my most recent job, my most recent 9 to 5, it wasn't my baby. And I had to do what was aligned with me, with my passion, with my purpose. And the typical 9 to 5 was not aligned with my goals and what I felt was my purpose in life. And I wanted to nurture my own baby when it comes to being a business owner.
Yeah.
I started with tutoring, so I was solely providing tutoring services for children in maths and English because I still wanted to work with children. That was what I have been doing for over a decade. I was doing that virtually when the pandemic started. I still do virtual tutoring now, and I also provide education consulting for childcare centers in GTA and back home in Trinidad and Tobago. But I wanted to be able to provide the services that I thought would be beneficial to my community and do so on purpose. And I felt that when I worked for someone else, no matter how amazing that person or that business was, it was still within the realm of what they wanted their success to look like. And it's not necessarily what I thought success for my community could look like. I saw a big need in the community, and I was raised to be of service, not to be taken advantage of or, to run myself ragged. But, there are people in need. And if I'm fortunate enough to be able to help provide or to help steer people in the right direction through their journey, then it's something that I feel I have a responsibility to do. With regards to the I Am in Diamond Initiative, that's how I created the name. I grew up on Diamond Crescent in Trinidad, and my mom calls me Diamond. So, the word diamond is very special and significant to me. She always says that I'm a diamond in the making. No matter the obstacles that have come my way, the pressures that I've been through, I keep going and I keep striving, and I've found a way to turn my fear or use my fear as fuel for my purpose. With regards to the ADHD coaching, so I started ADHD coaching in 2021, and it resonated with me so much. I've always worked with individuals with neurodiversities, but there was something about ADHD that just, excuse me, that just pulled me. Like there was this gravitational pull. And I actually had coaching myself. So I was the client. So I trained to become a coach, but I also trained as the client because I wanted to, one, get those strategies for myself. But two, if I'm going to share these strategies, then I need to implement them myself because I want to make sure that it's authentic, that it works, that I have proof of success before I just go handing it over to people and say, here, take this. So that's why I started ADHD coaching because I feel that I match an ADHD profile. It's definitely information I wish that I had when I was younger. And, being a full-grown adult now, I'm in my 30s, and I'm now coming to terms or coming to the realization that, hey, I believe I have ADHD or I match an ADHD profile. I want to help other adults who are, I don't want to say in the same boat because we all present differently and go through our situations in a unique way, but there are so many shared experiences and there are so many other adults out there who either have no idea that there is a term for what they're going through and that they can get the support for it. And there are so many people who are there saying, I wish I knew when I was younger. I wish I had this support when I was younger. I wish these strategies were presented to me and made available to me and affordable for me when I was younger. So that's why I started coaching in a nutshell.
Beautiful, beautiful. I'm so glad we got a little bit more of that back end. We talk about ADHD today. Specifically, we're going to look at adult ADHD. However, if you can just tell, our listeners, what is ADHD?
Okay.
Like the definition.
Yeah, of course. So basically, ADHD is defined as a neurodevelopmental disorder. I try to stay away from the term disorder, but it's literally in the title, ADHD, Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. The reason I try to stay away from disorder is because there's a negative connotation attached to it. And like right with the name, it makes you think, not enough, something's wrong with me, I'm damaged. And it creates such a negative mindset. But putting that aside, that's what it's defined as, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and it presents as ongoing patterns of hyperactivity, impulsivity, looking at being inattentive and having a lack of focus. So in a nutshell, that's what ADHD is. It typically develops before the age of 12 in children. However, you can be older or grow into adulthood and have those symptoms, for lack of a better word, missed or, have them misdiagnosed because they don't present in the way that we have been told ADHD looks like, which is predominantly physical, hyperactive, busybody symptoms. That's what I heard about ADHD when I was growing up.
Yeah.
However, there are many. Sorry,
No, I
you were
was
going to
just
ask a
like, I
question.
actually wanted to look at the hypersensitivity, like if you could just give
Right.
some illustrations of that too.
Yeah, of course.
Right? 'Cause-
Um, So there's the hyperactivity, which is
Mhm,
the H in ADHD. So that's when, you are very active. You're on the go all the time. It seems like you're a busybody, but it can present externally. So
mhm,
you're not slowing down, you're running around the room, you are going from task to task as an adult, but
mhm,
also there are internal ways to present as well. So
mhm,
that can be your hyperactive thoughts, so your racing thoughts, your restlessness, your
mhm.
overthinking. I'm sure many of us in the conversation have fallen prone to overthinking, but
Yes.
these are traits that are not consistently present or visible, I should say. So
Yes.
if it's something that's on the inside and it's something that's quiet and it's something that's very silently brewing, it tends to go unnoticed and unmissed. And if you don't present in the typical hyperactive way, then lo and behold, you're an adult and you're now finding out as your symptoms are becoming more prominent because the internal symptoms that you're presenting are no longer socially acceptable as an adult in the workforce, for example, or with
Mhm.
responsibilities. That's when you start having more trouble as an adult if you miss the opportunity to have a diagnosis when you were younger.
This
With
is,
regards,
go ahead.
go
Yes.
on.
No, no, no. Go ahead. No.
With regards to the hypersensitivity now, which is a little different from, being hyperactive. Hypersensitivity, hypersensitivity can present in a physical or an emotional way. So it's basically when you appear to be overly stimulated by or overly affected by external, so physical or internal emotional stimuli. So, for example, you may find individuals who are in a setting, whether it's in the workplace or individuals who are studying, they're in university or college, and for example, you're doing an exam and you're having trouble focusing because the door keeps opening and closing. Some of the invigilators walking in and out. The person next to you is tapping because this helps them
Yeah, just looking
concentrate,
around. Yeah, yeah.
but that sound is like a tapping in your brain and it's distracting you from what you're doing. And then you also have the person who's tapping who may be having hypersensitivity as well, or who may have ADHD traits as well, because now they're stimming, they can't stop moving, they're being hyperactive, but this is actually helping them focus their skills or focus their attention on what they're doing. So it can present in many different ways for other people. Hypersensitivity, it, it, it allows you to be easily distracted.
Mm-hmm.
So, having trouble focusing on what you're doing, starting many different tasks and not being able to complete them, to finish them. It's like having, 50 tabs open on your computer, on your desktop, or in your phone. I
Yes.
actually have I actually have 85 tabs open on my phone right now, which I keep saying I'm going to close them off, and then I keep thinking, oh, but I might need this one day, or I might want to come back to this. Um,
Until it all disappears when you don't want it to.
until and that's technology for you. But but picture those tabs, those 85
Mhm.
tabs open on your phone. Picture them being open in your brain. And you have 85 different thoughts that are open and running around in your brain, and you're sifting through them consistently, back and forth,
And
racing thoughts.
this is what I'm looking at too. When I'm looking at the ADHD, like the signs of it, and like the forgetfulness, right
Hmm.
there with all these things that are open, the lifestyle in itself that we're dealing with even the digital technology in itself,
Yep.
we are literally in this world of excess,
Hmm.
overthinking. It's just and interruptions. You've
Yes.
shown some amazing examples. I mean, like just to show, like what hypersensitivity looks like, or hyperactivity. So not hypersensitivity, hyperactivity, that someone could be
Mm-hmm.
just silently, and it could be in a deep thought, and the mind just have
Yep.
cool.
Yep. On the go all the time.
On the go. I'm
All the
seeing and then there's a similarity to you were showing as well, like how this is similar, the similarities to anxiety and how they tie in, and probably how they play off of each other. Like, I
Yeah,
think we're living in a world with a lot of ADHD people, and those that
agreed.
master it gonna find some success, some really good success.
That's the thing. That's the thing. And there are two sides to it, because when you master it, sometimes you can master it without knowing that you mastered it, right? Or without having a diagnosis. And because it seems like you've mastered it, you don't get the support you need to continue mastering it or to continue growing and thriving, because it seems that you're high functioning. And when you're high functioning, a lot of people tend to think that you don't need the help or you don't need the support. But high
Mhm.
functioning ADHDers or high functioning individuals in general need support too. They need help too. But then on the other hand, on the more positive side, when you've mastered it, then you can hopefully help someone else learn how to do so. Or, you take stock of that, and you take pride in that accomplishment. And then if you do accomplish another trait that you haven't mastered per se, when you remember that I've mastered this trait, or I have been able to rein in my focus and attention a bit more, now I can tackle this next trait or symptom that I feel that I still need to develop. So it helps to give you momentum and motivation and keep you going as well.
Okay. That is critical. I also want to look at, also, you have looked at what ADHD can be linked to as well.
Mhm.
And this was something where I started to identify from our previous conversation,
Yep.
how it could impact relationships. I was also in deep meditation when one of my younger siblings that I'd met as an adult, she got very frustrated with me because of this plate that was always full of mine. And even when I was present with her, I was never really present. And she expressed that to me.
Mhm.
And I honestly might have thought she was even hating. You know what I mean? Because it
Right.
was like, I got this. I'm busy. You know what I mean? And the joke is,
Mhm.
it's interesting that when you're transitioning into your own independent businesses and so forth, especially that happening in 2020 more so, there was this rate, even before the pandemic, it was like a lot of, there was this boom of entrepreneurship that was happening. And now getting into that transition, I realized this is where I could see traits of this ADHD for myself.
Yep.
In terms of me working for somebody, they were asking where you come from. I could serve, like there's no, like there's no tomorrow. I love to give, like yourself, I love to help and whatnot. But it's, again, that's what can you do for yourself?
Mhm.
How can we get out of this executive dysfunction
Yep.
versus functionality? You said that ADHD can be linked to unemployment, financial problems, poor school performances, poor
Right.
self-image. I honestly started to feel that a little bit more in my quest for womanhood. I was in a competition with Amazing Race Canada, and my bestie, we were at the, like, right to the next level to get in,
Mhm.
and we kicked off because she said I was scatterbrained, and I was just like,
Oh.
yush, like, where are you going with this? And we kicked off, but
Yeah.
she was seeing what was going on, right? And she's a very educated woman, and she was seeing what
Mhm.
was going on. But again, these things are honestly hard to accept. That this is happening to me. But then the urgency, I left the last one out, where you have how it can be linked to poor physical and mental health.
Yeah.
And when you look at things like hypertension,
Mhm.
and all these cultural things, when I looked at this, I was like, I don't even know if we could touch this in this conversation, because I started to see even the connection to the pipeline of slavery, if it could propagate ADHD dysfunctions and certain conducts and whatnot when I've seen that it's linked to all
Yeah.
these things.
So I'll start backwards and go back a little bit. But with
Okay.
regards to, that connection with slavery, for example, I want to be very clear in saying that I don't necessarily want to compare, let's say, slavery to ADHD, because I don't want to say one is like the
No.
other. But if you look at, look at it on a systemic level, or look at societal divides, for example, this is something that obviously would have been extremely prominent in slavery. This is what slavery was, a very extreme and a very clear-cut divide on a societal and a systemic level. When you leave that extreme now and you look at ADHD, um, ADHD and with mental health in general, if you look at persons of color, and if you want to narrow down a little more specifically, women of color, you see a huge social or societal disparity when it comes to being able to access the resources that are available to you, being able to get it funded, for example, women or persons of color in general who are trying to seek funding for resource to be able to apply resources such as ADHD resources, assessments. Assessments are expensive. Being able to, create more affordable assessments and seeking diagnosis, for example, or even being taken seriously when it comes to, how you're defining or expressing your mental health development needs when you go to a clinician. You're not always taken seriously or provided with that level of inclusivity when you're a person of color, and it shows such a huge societal and economic divide, even a systemic divide. So I can draw parallels between the two without actually comparing the two.
Yes, I
When
saw you. You didn't even actually even like I'm looking at this. ADHD can be linked to. I just was like,
mhm.
oh, this is systemic. I mean,
But it is
as
though,
well. I think it's
100%
like
it is.
literally. You're not even talking about slavery here, but I'm like, as I'm doing I'm like, wow, this is the same
Mhm.
system. So some of us might like. I mean, we might even be exhibiting signs of it, but then it might be even like a lifestyle, just similar to like the executive function
Right.
where it's like a certain lifestyle that creates the cycle of ADHD or the patterns or the behaviors of ADHD, which ultimately can lead to a demise of relationships, poor health, etc.
Mhm.
You know.
Well, that's one of the factors, right? Environment definitely plays a factor in it. It's definitely a huge contributing factor. But, there's also, the genetic portion of it. So studies have found that individuals with ADHD actually do have parents who also
Definitely.
present with ADHD traits, whether they have been diagnosed or not. And if you look at how recent, or to me, it's recent, how recently the first ADHD case was diagnosed, that was in the 1900s. That's like yesterday. But I'm sure individuals would have presented with it before, but it would
Way
have been
before.
termed differently, and
Absolutely.
it may not have been clinically diagnosed. So you would have had your parents, your grandparents, your great grandparents who may have presented with these traits and had no idea what to call it or what it looked like until someone came up with the term for it. And now we can kind of draw back, look at the family tree and match those traits and see that it actually was present in my generation before. So there
Hmm.
is a genetic factor, but like you said, there's also the context that you are living in, sometimes just surviving in. And we want to help people move from surviving to thriving. You don't want to
Yes.
just continue feeling like your life is happening to you. And that's what Diamond Initiative Coaching is for, to help you
Hmm.
thrive and live your life on purpose. You're making these decisions. You're even owning your ADHD on purpose. Because like I said before, I don't consider it to be a disorder. And that's my very humble opinion. But I'm actually going to read a quote to you right now. And
Okay.
I posted this recently. It was by William Dodson, and he said, ADHD is not a damaged or defective nervous system. It is a nervous system that works well using its own set of rules. And that's my mission while I'm coaching my clients, is to help you find your skills and even find your areas of need and find the right way to change your mindset, to transform your mindset into seeing these negatives as a positive and getting the strategies to help you succeed in your daily life, to take the things that you thought were perceived flaws and find ways to make them work for you so that you're being successful in school. Your work performance and school performance is increasing. You are able to have more functional and productive and reciprocal romantic relationships, from familial relationships. You're able to manage your budget and not overspend and make or engage in impulsive buying. You know, how many of you have that shopping cart open with 15 to 30 items in it, and you feel that you have to buy it right now, but you know that you have a $150 utility bill to pay next week? So it's helping to regulate all of this.
Yeah, that is, and I love, like, again, it's funny, after we did your show and just, engaging, I actually started to use the digital technology a bit more. I don't know what it was. Again, I think it's rubbing off, but my life shifted when I started to use a digital technology, like in the last, I'm telling you, it's been amazing.
Yep.
I'm scheduling myself way better,
Good.
not because you told me to, but because I seen the example. I don't know what it was. Some seed was dropped, and I'm like, this because of Diamond Initiative? I'm like literally grow up and do this and get this right. But it honestly has made my life so much better just by just using technology. I mean, I was using my books. Don't get me, my notebooks, but I have a tendency to put it down. But we always have this phone and this technology in our hand.
Yep.
And I noticed that about you, where you just create the simplicity of saying, well, and scheduling your, my mother, like, I guess when we started to have like automatic withdrawals, maybe late 90s, I would say.
Right.
And my mother was apt to that right away. It was called fill up the bank, let all the, your expenses come out. Like, that did not exist technically before the 90s. You know what I
Right.
mean? And sometimes, we have a way of, creating these systems, but it's a really simple and good system.
It really is. And that's the thing, right? Simple but effective. And the pre-authorized payments are a lifesaver. Like, I could tell you from experience, because I used to miss payments, and it would irritate my mother to no end. And being able to set that, again, I had to find what worked for me, just like you and your mom had to find what worked for you. So, setting up those pre-authorized payments, or if you want to talk about other forms of technology, Canva and Calendly are my best friends. They're my best friends.
Canva and Calendly?
Canva and Calendly. And, if you're talking about, especially, when you're in the workforce, even with school, to be honest, but when you're in the workforce in particular, and especially when you own your own business, there's so much that you have to do, and there are so many hats you wear that, just in general, it's hard to manage. Now, add an ADHD brain onto that. Add, having trouble with task completion, add multitasking, add being inattentive, add forgetting to eat a meal because you're so hyper-focused on the one thing that you have to do for the whole day. It's a lot. And it doesn't need to feel like a lot, even though it is a lot. And again, it's finding the tools that work for you. So for me, for Canva helped me to create calendars. And this is something that I would advise you or anyone, or even my clients to do, is start creating calendars. Find a way that it works for you. And if technology doesn't work for you, that's fine. You could create a calendar, pen and paper, do it the old-fashioned way.
Whiteboard, anything, yeah?
Right, exactly, whiteboard, etc. But for me, for Canva, so what I can do is create what I call the QC, so the quarterly calendar. So set your goals in quarters for the year. So what do you have to accomplish in the first quarter of the year, the second, the third, the fourth, and then break those goals down into tasks. Put a timeline on it. You put a deadline on it, because when you put a deadline on it, it makes it more tangible, and it helps to push that momentum and that motivation a bit more. Once you do that, now you narrow those tasks down into very small, discrete steps to help accomplish what you need to do. And the thing with using it on the screen is that it's so easy to edit. You can, use your checklist and cross off as you need. You can delete, you can make bigger, you can change the background. Visuals, colors, numbers, those big bold letters really help to stimulate your mind as well. So being able to edit as you need is very, very important and very easy to do. And then with Calendly, it helps with your scheduling. So attach it to whatever calendar you want, whether it's a Google Calendar, Yahoo Calendar, whatever you use, whatever you need. And instead of having to manually do the scheduling with every client you have or every business meeting you have, let your clients do that for themselves. They just go to your link and it shows your availability and they just add themselves to your calendar. Simple. And it
Okay,
makes
I'm
it
gonna
quick
check
and
out
easy
this
for both of you.
Calendly.
No, you should, and it's very affordable, but depending on the level that you need right now, or the level that you're at, there is a free version to start off with. So it's not even that you have to pull money out of pocket at the beginning. So find what works for you, not just theoretically, but financially as well, because you don't want
Okay.
to add strategies that would then exacerbate other negative effects in other areas. So you don't want to just pay for a strategy that's supposed to help you, but now it's pulling money that you can't afford to give right now. So be very careful with what you're doing, but there are so many tools available that can help you, and technology definitely helps support those strategies as well.
I noticed that is a gift that your clients are going to get from you, because right off the bat, it was like, I could see it. And a lot of us I've seen people even get phased out of their career because of not even able to embrace the digital
Yep.
technology, exceptional lawyers, etc. But, age and the pace of what things are moving at, it's sometimes not as easy to adapt. But I know that, like, I'm just identifying, like, oh my God, a calendar is life in itself. It
Mhm.
means you have a life. I'm like looking at it, and it's like, oh, this makes sense. Oh, I'm doing this. Like I felt it actually boosts my self-confidence.
Right.
It also, I mean, just using a calendar, right off the bat, it shows you what matters. It helps you to prioritize, even when you don't think you can. Even, like, I look at myself, and it would be like, when it comes, again, it's more of a personal aspect. If it's for other people, they come first, unfortunately. And now it's now time for me to make me come first. And everything, actually, right, what I'm doing now, I clearly have to come first for me to be able to give what I have
I
to do
love
as
that.
a fashion designer turned farmer. I have to come first, take care of my seedlings, and in order for me to be able to bring that to the market. So me not coming
Mhm.
first now really, 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 really matters. It always did. I gauge that. It always did. But the calendar in itself, like, literally helps me to harness,
Yep.
to know what I'm doing. I cannot even believe I'm saying this, but the digital calendar. As
Mm-hmm.
much as I'm always on technology, the digital, but because I am on technology, I guess that would be the main advantage. But using my planner right now,
Yep.
I had to take a backseat, because the digital world
Technology
is
rules
making
right now.
way more
Mhm.
sense.
And it's, in the pandemic, we have been forced into further digital use. There's been
Mhm.
online classes, virtual learning, e-learning for our students, especially in the early years. But even in university, you've had people working from home now. So for example, I have a home office. That's where I'm working from. And we've been forced out of that comfort zone and had to learn, or keep up with the times and go with the ever evolving use of technology. Um, to take a quick sidestep from that, there's something you said just now. You said I come first, and it's so important that you said that. And it's, even though it sounds simple enough, there's so much weight behind that statement. And
Mhm.
so, I haven't known you for very long, like you mentioned earlier. This is our second conversation, but I hope
Yes.
you feel that sense of pride. I hope you felt that sense of pride when you said that, because especially for individuals with ADHD, it's so hard to put yourself first because of that. Like, we could go back to the hypersensitivity, for example, or that lack of emotional regulation. We want so much to be accepted, to be admired, to feel like we belong. And when you talk about the hypersensitivity, going back to what we started off talking about, being rejected feels like the end of the world sometimes, and feeling like you're not accepted could be so difficult for individuals with ADHD. So being able to get to that point where you can say, I come first, I belong, I am, you like, you know how big I am on the I am. So I love the fact that you mentioned that, and help steering away from that rejection a little bit. I don't know if you've heard of it, but there's this term called rejection sensitive dysphoria, and it talks about um, the way rejection is hard to bear and hard to handle. And we we take so much of it on and we process it internally, and it feels like we're always doing it and we're unable to release. It feels like those emotions are constantly bottled up inside of us because we're afraid to show how we really feel, for fear of being judged, for fear of failure, for fear of being rejected. And individuals in the ADHD share these traits so much and share these feelings so much. And it links back to what I like to call the banshee effect, where there's so much going on in you internally. There's that overstimulation, or being overly affected or overly sensitive to those stimuli around you, that you feel like you are bursting with rage, that you feel like you want to cry, you feel like you literally want to scream, or you're so happy that you feel that you want to jump for joy, but you're too afraid to show that eagerness, to show that excitement, to show the disappointment and the hurt and the fear. And it gets to the point where you literally feel like you're going to burst with emotion. And what I would say is schedule time to scream, schedule time to cry, schedule time to feel that joy. Because like you said, I come first, and it's okay to release and to be that banshee and scream at the top of your lungs if you need to, because it's okay to feel and release and get those emotions out of you so that you don't have that emotional turmoil going on.
Okay, that's very important. And it's funny because even I know we're specifically today might be looking at adult ADHD, but I mean, people are people at the end of the day. But there are some things where we, gain pride, all these different things were affecting me to like in this little quick space of time since I'm like, oh my God, do I have ADHD? Yes, I do. And I'm remembering, the jokes and teaching with kids and stuff like that, that we thought all the adults had ADHD. But then when you look at, being able to master this weakness, to be seeing all the stuff that comes with it. I don't know what to say. It's a weak, I wrote down weakness into genius. I was looking at your example with Michael Jackson, and I don't even
Yeah.
know if that's 100% genius when if we get in the deep there, but I see it with young children, all that you just described, like that are dealing with ADHD. I see, the emotions as
Right.
well. As an adult too, it's okay to scream, but then what about those kids that do need that moment to scream, but they're
Mm.
being told, what, slow down, calm down, easy. You know what I mean? They're
Yeah.
being, oppressed when in fact they need a release too. Because
Yep.
because sometimes we like to compartmentalize, okay, we adults with ADHD, but what about the kids? You know what I mean? That are
What
dealing
about
with
the
it, or that
kids?
you might be passing on those traits too,
That's the
right? Like
thing.
my daughter is like your age, right? And she literally likes to fill up the plate. You understand?
I do. I do.
And she has a son that is dealing with what I'm dealing with for sure.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And hers might be mass, but she likes to fill up the plate, and I pass that trait down. When you have someone like Michael Jackson, he clearly in that footage that you showed. I don't want to say it, maybe rest in peace, but he dealt with ADHD for sure.
Listen, I
I
don't know
don't
for
know, bro.
sure,
I don't
but
even know.
I don't know, and may he rest in peace. But I came across the clip and I looked at it and all I saw was myself. Um, and I know my mom is watching, and so she when I love music, right? And that not just the racing thoughts, but with the music example in particular, like it resonated with me so much, Sharon, because it
So,
happened last night, right? So it's so funny to me. She would ask me a question, and she I don't know why, but she has a habit of asking me a question while while I'm singing a song. But she does it so naturally, and She doesn't ask more than once. She asks the question. I continue singing. I hear her question. I make eye contact so she knows that I hear her. She knows that I'm paying attention to her, right? But she also knows I'm not going to answer until I'm done singing. And it works at home because it's my mom, or it's my partner, or it's my
Mm-hmm.
immediate family. But can you picture me in a networking event and a song comes on in the background and there's someone who I've been waiting to talk to all
Full
night,
conversation.
who I want to invest in Diamond Initiative, for example, and then I can't stop thinking about this song and I really want to sing this song. And even if I don't sing it out loud, it's in my head. I have to fight and work to make sure that I am paying attention to this individual. So it may work at home, but it may
Mm-hmm.
not be as socially acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
And when I saw that Michael Jackson clip, like you have like Oprah's talking to you, but at
You
the
just
same
like,
time, he's zoning out, making his music, right? And then, but at the same time, I like all praise to Oprah, but you look at putting someone on a pedestal, and I even looked at those the comments under the original post, and it's like, but Oprah's talking to you. Why would you keep singing? That's so disrespectful. And I'm not saying that it's respectful to be singing when someone's talking to you, right? But what I'm
yeah.
saying is, first of all, why do we rate Oprah over Michael Jackson? Just in general, like why are we rating one person over the other? Why do we have other people on a pedestal and we are not putting ourselves first, or we think that this person must be better than me and must have more respect than me because I am not enough, because I'm dealing with these traits, because I am hyperactive, because I'm always interrupting, because I can't finish a task to save my life. So it must mean that I can't live up to the Oprah level, right? So that's number one.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing for me was Michael Jackson is a genius too, not just Oprah, love Michael, may he rest in peace. So why then do we think that because we have these what may seem like disruptive patterns or disruptive and ongoing patterns, why does that mean that our genius level decreases just because we haven't yet learned how to make those traits work for us? Again,
Yes, it's not.
ADHD and success, or ADHD and genius, are not mutually exclusive.
Mhm. It's funny when you say, like, again, like making those traits work for us, because it's, I know how critical it is to holistically even approach that too, because
Mm-hmm.
when we, let's say some of, like, I could see some of the traits in myself that have worked for me.
Right.
Then I could see another spectrum where it's definitely not working for me.
Mm-hmm.
I could relate to Michael Jackson wanting to sleep,
Right.
his last hours on earth, where he wanted to sleep, but he was like stoked, right? Like totally hyper, can't sleep. You know what I mean? I don't know what it was, I wasn't there. But when you're hearing of it, I'm like, this was something that was probably not managed, because I know, I'll give an example. I was at the, gosh, it's in Mississauga, where it was a studio where Tina Turner and Prince had recorded here in Canada, and
Mm-hmm.
Metalworks. And I was excited. I just did a performance there, and it was well received, and I was excited.
Right.
Yeah, the next day, I ended up in a hospital,
Hmm.
right? Couldn't shut off the head. Definitely did not sleep that
Yeah.
night. And I was in the hospital, you know, diagnosed, maybe down the line with the hypertension, never had
Mm-hmm.
perfect blood pressure, but they clearly didn't have um, this lifestyle of this ADHD or awareness of it that was
Right.
eventually going to cause a physical health, a physical health issue versus managing. And then I look at Michael Jackson, genius, yes, mastered some of it, but clearly not all of it, because I just look at that. I can't shut my head off. As much as people want to blame people for murder and all that stuff, I think that was just a scapegoat to take down another strong somebody. I think
Mm.
the man just couldn't sleep, you know? And these are things that I know how critical it is for us as a people to really not be afraid of diagnosing this,
Yeah.
dealing with ADHD. I have looked twice and didn't, because of, I don't even know if it was pride. I think I was faced with a lot of pain at the time, and then I let the pain disappear and then didn't contact and set up my appointment,
Right.
right? But I think it's critical for many of us to be able to identify this so we can actually be able to be our best self and not be flying
I
on the seat
agree.
of our pants,
I
you
agree
know.
100%. You said that you allowed the pain to disappear. And there's so much, that's a very loaded statement in my opinion. And I thank you for sharing that and for being that open and transparent. Um, Individuals with peer pressure is a hell of a thing. And, we get that not just in our youth, but even in adulthood. You get it
Oh
all
yeah,
the time, amongst
oh
your
yeah,
circles, in your family, even in the workforce. Like it's inescapable, it's
absolutely.
unavoidable. And
Hmm.
when you have that fear of being judged or that fear of failure, that fear of how am I going to be perceived, you tend to let your feelings, like your pain, disappear. But does it actually disappear though, or is it being buried?
This is it, no, it's
Right?
being buried.
It's
It
still
would be,
there. Because
yeah.
unless you address it, if you address it, it can disappear. It's still there. Unless you address it and you work through it and you allow yourself to unpeel those layers and go through that healing process, it's still going to be there, whether it shows
Mhm.
up a week from now, a year from now, or even a decade from now. Because, when it comes to past trauma, for example, it can stay
Mhm.
buried for a long time. And,
Mhm.
our mind has a way of protecting us from hurt and from pain in some situations. So it may not be feasible for us to process that at that time. But because of that fear of how am I going to be perceived if I make this move, if I contact this individual, if I say this thing, if I ask this question, if I start this business, for example, if I leave my 9 to 5 because this is what people said I should be doing, or if I
Mhm.
pursue a career in a field that I was told I would be good for, I would be a good fit for, instead of actually pursuing my passion. If I do anything other than what is considered the societal norm, then I must be um, considered in a negative way. And as a result, we allow that pain and that fear and even that excitement to seemingly disappear. But like
Mhm.
you said earlier, I come first. Who cares what
Yes.
people think? Because people are going to judge you anyway. You can be doing everything right, seemingly, and that one person is still going to judge you.
Mhm. Mhm.
What does that have to do with you?
Yes.
Right? You define yourself and you decide what you want your life to look like, not what it should look like. What you are saying, this is what I want for myself. And
Mhm.
then you say, these are my strengths. These are the areas that I need development in. We're going to try to steer away from the weakness. These are my areas of weakness because we want to find strength and positivity in everything that we're doing, in the way we
Mhm.
phrase it, in the way that we change our lens, the way we view things. And then you get the strategies and the help or the coaching that you need to make your life work for you. So you're not surviving it, you are thriving through it and you are living it on purpose. So for
Okay.
future reference, contact me anytime, please.
I will, because it's like, even like for me, like I'm looking at the both. So there's like your comparisons to ADHD and anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And then they both show avoidance, poor time management, difficulty with focus,
Mm-hmm.
fidgeting. I don't even think I could ever overcome fidgeting. As much as I try to
Oh,
stop the fidgeting, my toes are going like this.
yeah, same. While
Literally,
we're talking, there's always
my
something
toes
moving.
are going like this. I'm also a grinder chewer. Like I like to chew because I'm always thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually improved in that area. And so, I like to chew, but then I also there's procrastination, difficulty concentrating, difficulty
Yeah.
relaxing. I used to actually like to, I don't know if it was I used to, but I like to get myself really exhausted to think that then I could relax.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I can really relax. Temper outbursts.
Yep.
Most recently, I was in a public place and I went off on somebody. I was
Mm-hmm.
honest, in all honesty, and they went off on me, and I went right back.
Hmm.
And never in my wildest dreams would I think that I would have a public outburst of such. You know what I
Yep,
mean?
it surprises you. It comes up sometimes at the least opportune moments.
Oh
It
yeah,
does.
random.
Um, so for something like that, or let's say, because I know there are, adults who may be in the conversation or who may see this later, who, either themselves or their partners may have ADHD or may display ADHD traits. And, we spoke about this a little earlier, where one of those ways that it presents in adults is having those strained relationships. So let's say you're having a dispute, for example, with your partner, or you are feeling like you're about to explode on someone, for example, have that anger outburst. Um, so I would suggest trying the 3 by 3, the 3 by 3 rule. So depending on the context, you either give it 3 minutes or you give it 3 days. If it's a I have to deal with this right now situation, then give it 3 minutes. So let's say you and your partner are in a dispute, you know, tempers rise. That's natural. We're human beings. But again, that impulsivity, especially as an ADHDer, that impulsivity can sometimes make you do and say things that you will regret later because it just comes out. It's that impulsivity. I have to get this out now. This is how I feel now, whether it's fact or fiction. So take 3 minutes, communicate with your partner and say, I need 3 minutes right now. I really want to continue this conversation. It's important to me, but I need 3 minutes just to reset. And in those 3 minutes, you're breathing. You're taking stock of your feelings. How am I feeling and how are those feelings presenting? Am I breathing heavily? Do I feel pain in my stomach or am I nauseous? Because symptoms present physically as well. And in those 3 minutes, you're also analyzing the facts of the situation because of the hypersensitivity. We tend to take information and forget the facts of the situation, and we go straight to how we're perceiving it or how we feel about it. So ask yourself, what is factual about this situation, about what my partner said, about what I'm saying? And then give yourself 3 minutes to calm down and then re-enter the conversation. And then when it comes to the 3 days, for example, go back to the earlier example of your shopping cart. If you have 25 things in your shopping cart that you don't need to buy right now, give yourself 3 days. Walk away from it and then
Oh,
come back so that you're not spending money on every single thing in your cart that you don't need because your closet is full and
I get
because you have bills to pay as a responsible adult. Give yourself 3 days. So when you have,
3 days. That's a
those
good way to put
decisions,
it.
when you have
Awesome.
those decisions to make or you're in those conversations, just think about the 3 by 3 rule and give yourself time to steer away from impulsivity or from those anger outbursts, for example.
Yes. And that is something that is key with ADHD people. It's that
Mm-hmm.
you could see, I've seen with children anyways, where there's that apologetic. I really don't know what happened, but this big burst of flames just happened. Maybe they need a release. You shared some strategies you share a lot of strategies in your blog as well. Like, I mean, in terms of like, how to release, using these, dealing with emotions, regulating your emotions and so forth. But then
Mm-hmm.
it cued me into asking you, I know, because in the interest of time, we have 3 minutes left of the show, but I feel with the platform, we can go a little over, but in interest of time, but I said, I think you do poetry. And I sent you a message and I'm like, do you do poetry? Like,
So,
share something with us today.
no, 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 wait. So, so I write poetry. I don't okay, let me rephrase. I have never presented my own poetry verbally on a public platform.
Oh,
I also have never presented my poetry verbally to my own circle. So I can
oh,
compromise with you what I can do because I don't have it memorized, but it's on my
okay.
phone. But if I try to read it, it's gonna switch the live. Um,
Okay.
what I can commit to is tomorrow I will share a post
Okay.
and I will tag you in it, and you are permitted to reshare if
Okay.
you'd like.
And if you
Um,
could, and if you could dump it in this when this live is downloaded, if you could
mhm.
dump a poem in there because it would have put you some
Yeah,
pressure. Because I heard a poem. Did you write that woman's poem, International Women's Day?
I did. Warrior Woman. I'm
Well,
going to quickly pull it
hilarious.
up on the computer. Warrior Woman. Yes, I wrote that. And I thought it really important to. So I think that was one of the first times on the Diamond Initiative page that I shared um, my own poetry. But yeah, so I
Yes.
wrote Warrior Woman.
Yeah, beautiful, powerful poem. I love how you
Thank
use,
you.
I'm a poet, as you know, but as I love how you use the kryptonite, because I have a poem on kryptonite.
Mm-hmm.
Different
Mm-hmm.
angle, but similar angle. It's like, yo, this girl has to, like, she has to be a poet. Is this her poem? I haven't heard nobody. This is awesome.
It is, and
Yeah.
I chuckled when you messaged me and you asked because I'm like, look at her putting me on the spot. But but yes, I do thoroughly enjoy writing. And it is actually one of my form. Maybe I had this form without before I even knew that I or felt like I presented with ADHD. But it has always been one of my forms of release. It's how I release my emotions when I feel like that banshee, like I feel like I literally need to scream. Writing it down and seeing it there and releasing that, it takes it out of my head and
Yes.
puts it somewhere safe for me to revisit later. So
Yeah.
I put it in storage, basically. I write it down, I put it in storage, and then I revisit my feelings when I feel like I need to.
Yeah. And I want to say to our listeners, one of the dangers of like not really knowing you and not
Mm-hmm.
really knowing if you do have a diagnosis like ADHD, it's, how would I put it? It could become very destructive,
100%.
force in your
100%.
life. Um, you like again, I've learned about these emotions,
Mm-hmm.
like when these emotions come, regulating emotions come about, like the unregulated emotions, tell you the truth, where everything seems real and everything seems as this is how this is, and then when you look back and you're like, but we it wasn't
Mm-hmm.
as big as I really, really thought it was. Maybe the
Exactly.
natural 3 second, 3 minute rule had passed and I was
Mm-hmm.
able to, and in some cases you might not be able to see it, and not knowing that that was connected to ADHD. This is like something amazing what you're doing, Jamelia.
Thank you. I appreciate
It
that.
is
I
something
appreciate that.
amazing because you could go see a therapist. You could see it like this is like getting to the root of some issues
There you
with
go. And you have to get to the root
oneself.
of it.
Yes.
100%. And you said that when you get the diagnosis and you know and you learn these things, but even taking aside from the traits that can be developed or the symptoms that can be developed, when you know and you learn, when you get assessed and you get that diagnosis or you go through that self-assessment and you can really match that profile and you have that awareness, information aids transformation.
Hmm.
And that information and that awareness, it helps transform that guilt and shame of things that you would have experienced in the past or ways that you would have presented yourself in the past or consequences that would have come from very impulsive decisions in the past that led you down a route that you did not want to go to, but because of your impulsive actions you felt like you had no choice, you were given. When you it's called, this is what I've experienced. Had I had these supports and strategies, life could have been and felt so different for me. It helps to nurture and foster and facilitate that self-acceptance, that self-confidence. It boosts that self-love. And it helps you to practice that self-forgiveness for some of the decisions that you may have made in the past that may not have happened had you known before. And it also helps you to just accept, own it, and then move forward into being the best, literally the best version of yourself.
This is true. This is so true. We do have some, Jamila, we do have some questions that have popped in. One I'm not too clear on. It says, do you think this diagnosis is over abused? Oh, do you think the diagnosis is over abused?
Okay. I get like
I,
used
I've
too
heard
much,
this.
like even when it's not necessary. Um,
Yeah, I get that.
what I would say to that is with children in particular, I know we're talking about the adults tonight, but because of the
Mhm.
nature of that question, with children in
Mhm.
particular, what I've seen in the past is the minute we see, especially with boys, the minute we
Mhm.
see a child who can't sit still and who's on the go all the time, yeah, he has ADHD. And we just,
Yeah.
brush it off. So in cases like that, yes, I would say it could have the risk of being overused, or too quickly
Just as
diagnosed.
a title, even as a title, like,
It
oh, brush
is.
him off. Like,
It
hey,
is.
he has ADHD, that's why he's behaving that way.
Exactly. And
You know.
there's a big stigma around it, right? And as much as it's positive and beneficial to know, like I said, information aids transformation, it can also be very detrimental and very dangerous, because the minute there's a label placed on you, there's so much affiliated with it, because people have their own perceptions of what ADHD should look like, right? People have their own stigma. Like, mental health is extremely stigmatized in the community. We know that, especially in
Hmm.
our Black community. Let's be honest. It's improving now, but no one wanted to admit to it in the past. But like I said, I don't see it as a disorder. So don't brush someone off if you think they have ADHD. First of all, don't label
That's what,
them, because chances are you're not qualified to label them. So let's start there. You don't need to call anybody's child or any of your peers as an adult. You don't need to tell them they have ADHD if you're not clinically
well,
qualified to diagnose someone. Let's start there. Secondly, it's not your place. If you think you recognize it, or you have an inkling, then seek someone who has experience with it, or talk to a family physician, for example, talk to a psychotherapist, and redirect that individual in a very respectful way to get the resources you assume they may need. But don't just hand someone a diagnosis when they didn't ask you for it, and don't make an assumption. There are very strategic and systemic ways to go about seeking a diagnosis. And we want to make sure that we are being backed by science, first of all. We want to make sure that we are being very accurate and factual about what we are presenting to families, because it's such a very touchy subject, and it's not easy for families to get that diagnosis, or for an individual to get a diagnosis. Even if it's beneficial, it's still something new, and not everyone can easily adapt to change. And that's a change. That knowledge is a change as well. So just be respectful with it.
okay. There's another question from Twitter here. It says, my son, let me just see if I can see clearly. My son has been diagnosed with ADHD. What are some creative ways? And this is the key thing too, is not,
Mhm.
diagnosing is not just an excuse to just toss a title on somebody and,
Right.
as we were saying, brush them off. But what are some strategies? And just to sum it up too, as well, somebody also wants to know, what are ways we can overcome fear. I'm going to just put in a two-part. So what are some strategies, some creative ways? I can't see the whole question. Oh, wait. Creative ways to help them through outbursts and meltdowns.
Mhm.
Um, that's the one question there.
Okay, so thank you for your question, guys, by the way. So with regards to that, and I have to give a very general response because I don't know the individual personally. I
Right.
prefer to give individualized advice because, not every hat fits the head, right?
No.
And we want to make sure that, the strategies can apply to each context and each person. But that being said, some general strategies that I would suggest is, first of all, see if you can give yourself a week, or even a month, but you choose the time that works for you, and see how best you can track the outbursts. So you want to see what happened. So think about your ABCs. You want to see the antecedent. So what happened before, you want to write down what the behavior is, and then write down the consequence or what followed. So that way, when you write it down, you can track, and maybe, depending on the situation, maybe find a pattern that is, or a trigger for those outbursts. So that's the first thing. We want to find out the why, and once you know the why, then you'll be able to address the how. Once we find out the why, or even if that hasn't been successful, with regards to the how, write down what your son's interests are, what appeals to him. I don't know his age, but we were talking about the poetry before, and I mentioned that worked for me. That was my way of releasing my emotions, because I too struggle with emotional outbursts. Like, I'm very hypersensitive when it comes to what's going on around me, external stimuli, the words and actions of others close to me, or who are not even personally close to me. But if
Why?
Yeah, so
That's what I'm
um,
seeing with this kid, this child. It's funny you say that. Okay.
yeah, so
Hmm.
find his interest and see how you can implement that as a release tool. So whether he's writing, if he likes art, then when he's in that in the midst of those feelings, he can turn to art. Whether he's painting, drawing, if he likes music, for example, or if he needs something to physically release those emotions. So give him an area where he can go and take a ball and just throw it and yank that at the wall, because now you're showing him that I'm not trying to stop you from having those emotions, because emotions are natural. And we have been, trying to downplay children's emotions for way too long. Um, Especially for the boys, like I said, men are taught that showing emotion is weakness and being vulnerable is not okay. So if we can find a way to recognize and appreciate the fact that they first have emotions, and then find positive ways, or structural ways to allow them to release those emotions, it may um, transfer the impulsive outburst to, this is a space where I can feel safe in releasing how I feel and getting that out there.
Thank you so much,
You're
Jamelia.
welcome.
That was powerful. I'm just like, wow. Like I'm just again, I'm really appreciative for your vision, for you making that decision to follow your vision, um, and your purpose. I think the question came back again. Okay.
Yeah.
And your purpose to be able to help those that are dealing with ADHD, help those that, to identify ADHD, and as well as to give them strategies, so that they can live a better full life,
Yeah.
And I'm glad that you chose yourself first, you know what I mean, to really experience this transformation. Before we
100%.
go, if you could just let our listeners know where they could get in touch with you from to gain, some of the services that Diamond Initiative offers for both people dealing with ADHD and executive function.
Yes, of course. Excuse me. So you can find me on Instagram for Diamond Initiative at Diamond underscore initiative. So at DIAMOND underscore INITIATIVE. You can send me an email, diamond underscore initiative at yahoo.com. On my profile, there's also a link to schedule a discovery or clarity call with me. So schedule that call, hop right in, let's have a conversation. It is complimentary, so it is a free discovery call. It's not something you would be charged for, and that's going to help you figure out the reason behind needing coaching sessions to begin with. Learning more about ADHD, I even have specialized discovery calls. So if you may not feel ready to get an official diagnosis, but you want to see if you do match a profile, I can help steer you through a self-assessment as well. So that's something that we can do. But yeah, contact me anytime. I am constantly putting content out there just to help educate and create further awareness, and just to help, push you, give you that little momentum, to initiate that healing process, and recognizing ADHD and recognizing what you're going through as strengths, as superpowers, as innovation. You have an innovative mind. Don't be afraid to let that work for you. Um, I know we're out of time, and I saw a question coming in from 22 Art Avenue. So feel free to send me a message after, or schedule a call with me, and we can have a little chat about that as well.
Yes, yeah, that question was about the overcoming fear, but I know
Yeah.
we'll be here all the time. I just want people to get in touch with you, and I am gonna book my discovery. Like I'm
Please
gonna book
do.
it. I will. And the thing is too is sometimes it's like you again going back to making yourself first. The second time that I went to do it, it was like, oh, I don't know when and I have time, and just it's gonna be scheduled when I don't. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
when in fact I will definitely make that time to really think, because already when you say to somebody in your communities, it's just taboo in many ways. They're like, you don't suffer from ADHD. I'm like, okay. You know what I mean? But I'm like,
But
but I'm check, check, check. I'm like dealing with this stuff.
I'm
I can't hide it. I've been, you know
hmm
what I mean?
I'm going to interject really quickly. I'm so sorry to cut you off, but you said I don't suffer with ADHD. Tell them you're right. I don't suffer with ADHD. I
I
have
don't
ADHD and I'm
suffer.
thriving.
I'm
Period. I'm not
thriving.
suffering.
I'm
Period.
not suffering. Yes. But there
Exactly.
is, it's funny. there is sometimes suffering in terms of
No,
like you're dealing with but again, it's true. I don't suffer with it. May I thrive.
exactly. It's about transferring. So, for example, I'm not emotional. I feel emotions strongly. I'm not
Mhm.
suffering, but I go through experience that hurt me. There's a way to reframe and to rephrase things. Again, change your mindset. Don't take ownership of that. Transfer that onto the feeling itself because it's not who you
Okay.
are. It's what you're
Amen.
experiencing. And now you're going to take those experiences and shape them and use the strategies to define who you are and to make yourself the best version of yourself. You're not
Okay.
suffering. You're
Love
going
it. I love it. And I know when you address that, you like it's not, you don't claim that my
Don't
ADHD.
exactly.
You don't
Don't
claim
claim
it.
it. Accept it. You can accept it and hold it with
Identify.
pride, right? Exactly. Identify with it, accept it, hold it with pride, but don't try your best not to see it as detrimental. Like I said before, ADHD and success/genius are not mutually exclusive. They go hand in hand. You just need to know how to recognize and be willing to. And sometimes there's a fear of accepting it too, because we're
Mhm.
fearful of our potential because there's so much of it. ADHDers have such a creative mind and there's so much to tap into, but you have to be willing to do it. And that's why I'm here to help you.
Thank you, Jamelia Gay from Diamond Initiative.
You're
We are
welcome.
signing out. It's been a great session with you. One love.
Thank you for having me. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.